and there was a girl half my size, and she pinned me to the ground, and I couldn't move. And I was just like, what happened to me? Like, I came here thinking I'm now like full top and I can't move.
Like, for example, I think when I was an introvert in school, I was not a very confident person. But I think that has changed so much since then that confidence is also kind of a part of my identity.
People would say, oh, you look on. They never thought I was underprepared for an exam because I looked like I was very over prepared and confident. I'm like, hello, excuse me. I am freaking out inside.
So, girls, how about independence and identity?
Wow. Interesting topic.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
There's so much to say.
Yeah. Whom should we start? I think let's start with Hema. Hema, what does independence mean to you?
It's sort of evolved over time, but I think there's a constant about it, which is really the freedom to be whoever I want to be without it affecting other people. That's been like the big thing for me. It is always, you have these constraints, you're thinking about family, this, that, friends. But for me, that independence now is, I can do stuff without it impacting anyone else. And so that and of course economic independence, which is like a whole different can of worms. But you?
I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. I think my definition of independence is also like evolved over time. I think as a kid, it was just the freedom to make my own decisions. And I think my parents were very, very particular about small things like us picking out clothes like to wear every day, which is now looking back quite unheard of for like really small kids. And I used to think, I think in my early 20s, I used to think that independence is about being able to do everything on your own and not needing anybody. But I think as I'm entering my 30s now, I feel like it's not about what I can do. And I don't need to be able to do everything on my own to be independent. But it's about just being more like comfortable in my skin. And that's kind of where I think identity also kind of comes in, and having the freedom or the space to be able to express myself in a way that I want to.
Nice.
What about you?
For me, independence has been a very important part of my identity. So I remember in my teens and early 20s, I used to have a large group of guy friends, a lot of boys who were my friends, and constant feedback from my guy friends would be, Anusha, it's going to be very hard for any guy to be with you because you're so fiercely independent. And that's just been my tag. And I don't know why everybody found that so intimidating. So it's nothing that I had to learn to be. In fact, it was something that always scared people, which is very strange. Like, I am independent, it's me. Why does it put other people off? The fact that, I decide what I want to do, I go where I want to go, I travel wherever I want to travel. I just never understood why it was such a problem for other people that I was independent. And they never said anything else. They didn't say that you're rude or you're very opinionated. Or they're just like, you're fiercely independent. It's hard for any guy to even think of being with you. And I never took it in the negative. I never, it just strengthened my self-belief. And that's why I say that independence is my identity. Because I always felt that, hey, if this is me and I can carry on with my life being like this, and I still, sure, I can't have one person in my life maybe, but I have this range of friends who love me for who I am. And they know me in all possible ways. They've seen me at my most vulnerable. They've seen me at my strongest. And they're still around. So this is fabulous. This is great. So I never qualified what that fierce independence meant. Like, does it mean that before the boy can hold the auto, I hold the auto? I don't know. Like, nobody defined it.
So it's interesting. You're saying that, right? Because for me, I always took that kind of independence for granted, right? I always did my own stuff. I keep joking that because I'm tall, whatever. No one has ever picked up a suitcase for me or ever helped me across the road or thought I was a helpless damsel, right? So I've always taken that kind of independence for granted. I'm going to do my own thing, go wherever I want. But I think for me, the independence that I value now is really in my head more than anything else. I think for me, it was, I didn't realize that I was tying myself in knots, thinking about how it would affect other people and therefore stopping myself. And I think that has changed now. I'm like, oh, what I do only impacts me. So that's like a whole, world of freedom that I'm really starting to cherish, because I think if ever I want to teach my girls one thing, it is forever be independent. Like what you're saying, that's what I emotional independence or whatever. That's what I want for them. And I think it's so tied to identity, like you both were saying. It's very, very
Yeah. I think if you're talking about evolution and what has changed, I've also had a journey. So when I say independence was my identity from a very long time, I think as soon as someone like me who is, very upfront and very straightforward, and then I got married. I'm still married. So
that's very clear.
yeah. And when you get married, you're not taking decisions just for yourself. And it's not just a factor of me and my parents and my immediate family that my decisions are going to impact. It's also my husband and my husband's family and how they feel. And they come from a very different background. They're used to softer women. And here I am in all my glory. I think over there, when it came to independent, doing whatever I wanted to do, I started thinking twice. And not because it was imposed on me. Mind you, my in-laws are amazing. My extended family is amazing. It was still very, very self-imposed that I need to be a lot more careful when I'm voicing my opinions. I need to be a lot more thoughtful. If I just decide to get up and go for a coffee, I can't do that. I have to first wake up, make sure everybody else has coffee. And then, so I think the responsibility was new. And in some ways, I felt like I can't just do everything I have to do because I have to care for other things. But luckily, I mean, of course, you can call it luck, but you can also call it you choose such partners that understand how much you value independence. So between my husband and I, both of us have our own lives. Both of us have our own relationships with the other set of parents as well. And so we maintain that self-identity and independence of thought and how we have our own relationships. And also the fact that if he wants to go for his games and his stuff, he will do it. If I want to go for my dance class and my things, I will do it. And it is not, we still live our independent lives in that way without having to worry. But that came after a good 4 or 5 years for me. Probably it was always there for him, but it came after 4 or 5 years for me, because in the initial years, it was all about building it together and making sure, we're all nice and close and tight-knit as a big family unit in that sense. So yeah, that evolution, like that thing of being a one unit, then becoming a multi-unit, and now again figuring out independently who I am, I think that's also been quite a journey for me.
I'm just thinking of something that happened last year, and this whole idea of independence and identity and that interplay. So after I broke my leg, for almost 2 months, I was not allowed to put any weight. So there was a lot of dependence on people. And as somebody who's been, living alone right after school, that was a very new feeling to kind of live with my parents again for that short duration, and kind of be dependent on somebody to be able to get out of the house, be able to do very small things that I would not even think about, right? Or take for granted almost. And I think that really made me question my identity to a large degree, right? Because like you said, being independent was so much a part of who I was that in the absence of that, I really began questioning, who am I, right? And apart from all the physical kind of changes that I was going through and having to kind of, literally relearn how to walk, this whole idea of like being able to mentally and emotionally think about identity, which is such a complex and like multi-layered thing, was like another thing that was kind of going on in parallel, which was like an interesting thought experiment almost that I was forced into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it does that to you. I understand what you're saying because I was detected with early arthritis in 2020 during COVID. And when I could not do anything, and I had adopted pets, adopted a cat and a dog, and they've been with us now for 4 years. It's amazing having them. But not being able to care for them on an everyday basis the way I would want to really made me question my identity as somebody who thought that I thought I was very responsible, I was capable, I can take care of them, and now I'm not able to. It does impact you. So these external factors start impacting your sense of identity and independence for sure.
I think for me, actually, the effect of, the 30s, 20s, and 30s, once you have kids and everything, you really start doing what Tanusha was talking about, right? Start thinking about other people in your life. And if you're already that kind of personality, which I was, your sense of identity kind of submerges with the sense of independence. And I think for me now, as my kids are leaving the nest, it's like, oh my God, I can do what I want to do. But then you have to recapture that sense of identity because it's no longer who you were in your 20s. It's not even who you were 5 years ago. It's like a whole new phoenix rebirth that is happening. And I think my sense of identity has evolved along with my independence. I'm no longer the girl I was, at 27, 28. I'm not the woman I was at 38. And I'm like a whole different creature. But I'm in a place, I think, right now where I'm most happy with my sense of independence and my sense of identity. I mean, my identity, of course, is still sort of evolving. But I think it's the most calm I've ever been about who I think I am. Still nutty neurotic, but it's like degrees of nutty neurotic. So I think that's it. And as I navigate my relationships, parents, partners, children, siblings, friends, even, that sense of new identity is actually informing those relationships as well. And I think some people don't understand it. Maybe from the past, they're like, oh, you used to be that way. And I don't connect with that anymore because I'm like, but actually, I'm not that person anymore. And the people who know me now can't connect with that sense of identity that I had before. They're like, wait, you used to be like that? And so it's just morphed so much in the 2 decades. But yeah, it's a happy place to be, I think.
I like that you brought up this point of being calm about your identity because in this journey of self-evolution, we put ourselves in so many buckets that we really start questioning who we are. For example, if you ask me what allows me to even become who I am, right? How do I even gain my identity? I feel it's constant decision making and it's exposure. These two things. If I don't expose myself to different things, I will never figure out who I am. For example, I wanted to start a fitness journey. So I thought that, hey, I don't want to go to a gym and, be yelled at to like lift weights and all. So I will start with yoga. It's a very nice practice. I'll be calm, I'll be humble, I'll be all of those things. And I started yoga and pretty soon I realized I don't like it very much. And then I did it for a year and I'm like, itna progress nahi ho raha. And then I joined the gym and I'm doing really well in the gym. Yeah, and I'm like, I like this. Lifting weights and doing all this stuff. So I'm like, what I thought I would like, I don't like it. And what I did not think I might like, I like that. And if I would not go ahead and expose myself to it, I would have never realized that. after doing that, I thought, okay, I will go now for an MMA class and, I'm strong. I'll be able to handle this. And then there was a girl half my size, okay, in height, in everything. And she pinned me to the ground and I couldn't move. I just couldn't move. And I was just like, what happened to me? Like, I came here thinking I'm now like full top and I can't move. So it impacted my identity there that I thought but then I said, okay, let me try something else. I tried boxing class and I was fabulous at boxing. Like I got the stances right. And so it's all about exposure. Same thing when I was in my 20s, I used to trek a lot and I used to be ahead of the pack. Then in my early 30s, when I went for a trek, I was the sweeper. I was literally the last person and people in their 40s were ahead of me. And it hit me so badly because I looked fit and everything, but I just could not walk ahead. So I feel like at every point in time, like we set these things saying that this is my identity. I am a cool person. I am a fit person. I am a this. I can trek. I can do this. And your body or the circumstances or even in contrast to what other people are. Like I might think I'm very smart. But when I sit around smarter people, it's subjective now. Now I have to be the sponge and I have to take things from others in that way, right? So I think identity we might think is a core of who we are, but it's informed by so many external factors and it gets evolved and we question ourselves. And so I feel that exposure is super, super important. Only if you try can you tell who you are.
And next question then, right? What are elements to our identity that was like, this is a perfect segue from where she is. Right? What are sort of core elements to identity that you think inform your identity?
Yeah, I'm going to digress a bit here for 2 minutes, but I think one thing that has been really pivotal in shaping who I am today was my college experience and life, right? I was 18, I was on the other side of the country living in a hostel for the very first time. And I think just almost being in a new space allowed me to kind of start from scratch. I was an introvert in school, and I think college is when I truly came into my own skin. And if I were to try to look back and think about why that happened, or like, I think a lot of it was to do with people and having people around me who made me feel safe to be able to say what I want to do, to be able to fail, to experiment and do all of those things, right? So I think for me, people is kind of very core to identity, even though it might be something that's very innately you, right? But there are spaces where you feel like you're okay expressing who you are and being truly yourself. And there are spaces where you don't feel like that. So I think that people is definitely one thing that's on top of my list.
I agree with what you're saying. There's a saying that beautiful places make beautiful people and prisons make prisoners, right? So the environment that I'm in, it really impacts my identity and question it. The people I surround myself, that does it. I think these two things are super important. And I've experienced this in different ways. Like, for example, I don't think if you dump me in a remote village in India, I'm not going to be like this. I will try to blend in because I don't want to die and I don't want to attract any sort of bad attention. So I will be a very toned down version of myself. At the same time, workplaces. So I am from an advertising industry. I'm from the advertising industry. And it's the place where I feel like myself. I have worked in corporates. I have worked in tech companies. And I immediately felt out of place. Be it in the way we dress, in the way people openly talk, in the way work is admired, and work is taken seriously. It's so different because there have been times where I've actually questioned if I am good at what I do and does it even make a difference? Do people actually care? Do I have the ability to contribute to something? And this all eats up at your identity when you're at the wrong place. So, and I've been at wrong places in the past where work is questioned for no reason. Nobody's interested in the work. People are more interested in putting you down, or playing with your head, as opposed to in advertising where the work matters. You solving a problem matters because, bhai, film banna hai. You can't dilly-dally. There is a deadline, the film has to be made. There is a deadline, the project has to complete. You have to have a brand ready. You have to have all of this. So I feel figuring it really helps to figure out where you bloom the best, to really feel like yourself. And I'm glad that advertising found me. And that's a whole different story of how advertising found me rather than I found advertising. Save it for another podcast. So the work environment and the right sense, the right people, right? I mean, it's really about high standards, I feel, because people always say, Anusha, you have no patience for mediocrity, and you always expect a lot out of people. But I have found that, if I count 10, 15 friends on my fingers, they are fabulous. Like, I love my friends and I love who I've found. I love the tribe that I've created, and they're all exceptional. So I have high standards.
Why not?
So should I dumb myself down, get bored in certain places just so that I seem friendly and just so that I come across? No, it is this high standard that has made me like that. So people and places, I feel, is super important. But if you talk about elements, oh God, there are so many elements of nature versus nurture, right? If you ask me what is identity, I'll say at the core of who you are. But I think that's such a small view of it, because how do I vibe with people? I'll tell people I'm an only child, becomes part of my identity. I am convent bred, becomes part of my identity. I'm Mangalorean, so I will love coastal food. So I will be a miser, And I'm a Bombay person, so I'm bindas. I'm probably if I go abroad, it'll be like I'm an Indian. So each of these things have so much to do. Oh, I'm middle class. Oh, this is my middle class mentality. We use these as helping people understand where we are coming from and what makes us us, what makes me. If the moment somebody looks at me and they're like, you're from Mumbai, they get it. That's why, because you're so bindas. So then you get it. It becomes part of your identity. So it's not just the internal core. We have all these external crutches that eventually do define who we are, but also help other people understand where we're coming from.
So yeah, I think for me, a lot of what you girls have said, right? Obviously, the people you interact with make who you are. And I've had the privilege of really having a very diverse set, from scientists to writers to ad people to journalists. I have so many different friends, and it really helps me be in my head young, forever, because you're like constantly talking to so many different people. I am very young. I have a whole ways to go.
Yeah, we're not disclosing who's from which generation.
Yes, we don't know what generation I'm from. But I think one crucial, weird part that I discovered, and it took me a little while to accept, was that my sense of myself really comes from where I've been born and bred a lot. I think for me, it's very, like you said, it's Bombay, right? But for me, it's sort of South India, sort of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu type of thing. And I think it really got, before I went to the US, I was a global citizen in my head. In the US, I was a global citizen in my head. But it was in the US and in Switzerland that I realized that I need my roots to be who I am, to really inform from within and then accept all the forces that are outside as part of it, right? So without that core for me, I felt mooringless. So when I came back, I spent a couple of years trying to fight it and be, Palo Alto, Whitefield type. Look at me.
I don't know that version of Hema.
Farm retreat.
Oh my God. The Founders Club. Adesh Farm Retreat is a meme now.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, right? You live in that little bubble, and I realized that I did not. I wanted to actively not do that. And that required me to accept that I was a South Indian, well traveled person. And as long as that was okay, it left me free to explore my identity in different ways and to accept other influences, knowing that I belong somewhere. That for me, that identity needed to be informed from a sense of belonging. And yeah, I feel like now I'm sorted. I like the fact that I am a sari wearing, uh, swearing like a sailor, whiskey drinking traveler who's going off on solo trips to various places without feeling, out of place. And I think that transformation was almost a decade in the making. And now I'm like, this is who I am, people. I'm perfectly happy to wear this in Prague if I have to. And I'm perfectly happy to wear jeans in whichever place I need to be in. And it's okay. And I think that's that transformation of identity that has happened in my 40s. Really, that's like pretty big. I kind of cherish it, actually. I'm not struggling to fit in anymore. So,
I like that you bring up this point of struggling to fit in. So, growing up, for some reason, my mom was, I think we all have flag bearers in our life who really either like that inner circle that believes in you or that puts you down, and that really impacts your sense of independence as well as identity. So for me, my mom was a gung-ho person who was like, you be you. It doesn't matter what the world thinks. So as I was growing up, whatever I wanted to wear a dress one day, wear a dress. I want to wear pant shirt, wear pant shirt. Mostly she would keep my hair short because no lice and easy to send to school and very practical, right? Extremely practical. And so when I would hear people say, oh, I have to grow my hair, otherwise my daddy will get very angry and all, I'm like, तेरे daddy को बोलना बाल उगाने के लिए, तू क्यों उगा रही है? Why is this a dad conversation about you having long hair? But it's because it's practical. And of course, when you can take care of yourself, you grow your hair, you do all of those things when you can take care of yourself. But the point being that mom was always so gung-ho about who I am. She used to say this thing that when dogs bark, the elephant keeps walking. So the elephant can't be bothered by barking dogs or something of that sort, she said. And I'm like, who's the elephant? She's like, all these other people are barking. Yes. You're the elephant, you keep walking. You don't care about the barking dog. And the context was always this, people. I went to a convent school. In convent school, you're taught to sit in this way, and your socks have to be here, and your hair has to be parted, and even if you have short hair, you have to put one hairband and all of that stuff, right? So that, or the fact that we could not afford fancy things. So the pride in wearing very, very affordable stuff, like the pride in wearing Hawaii chappals and going to play. You don't have fancy sports shoes, but you have Hawaii chappal. Yeah, be unapologetic about it. Go for sports in Hawaii chappal. It's okay, and then so that's how it step by step builds up. Like, hey, no, you have to take the BST bus. I can't afford to send you by school bus. So BST bus, 75 paisa. I have fought with the bus driver, with the conductor, because one day prices went up from 75 paisa to 1 rupee. I'm like, no, it's 75 paisa. You have to give me 25 paisa back. And, so imagine a child having that argument with that person, because there is no shame in asking for your money back. And I think it was all just built slowly for me, to a point when you hit puberty. And then boys start giving you attention. And then the boys will be like, why can't you be a little more girly? Why can't you walk like nicely like this? And why can't you? And I don't know from where. I think because this entire thing, this confidence builds up. And I just turned around and I'm like, if you don't like it, you're not my target audience. I'm sorry. I will find others. It's okay. You look at other girls, no, so many are there. Why are you looking at me? The fact that you're giving me attention means you like me for who I am. तो चलो नहीं तो नहीं मेरे को क्या है that's why I never had to change myself for anyone, and I was so quick to like break up if I didn't like it, then like move on and all of those things, because I just realized, I mean, of course, I always took feedback. Like if somebody, I remember somebody said that, you make really bad faces. And I do. Like it's apparent on my face when I don't like something or if I'm disgusted. And I get this feedback even now from my husband. Okay. So my second boyfriend and my husband were correct. I'm correct. But yeah, so feedback. Yeah, poker is not a strength. No, I can play poker really well, but in life, I am not poker faced. So yeah, so I feel like taking feedback from everybody helps, but decision making, like I said, you have to decide whether I will act on that feedback or not, whether I'll care about that or not, whether I'll control my facial reactions so that I don't come across as rude. But I will not change the way I walk, or I will not change the way I dress, or I will not suddenly act girly or start giggling. And there's nothing wrong in being that. It's just not me, right? So I will not do something that I am not in order to adhere to certain things that society or other people, like the majority of people would like. So I think my mom had a very big role to play in that unconditional acceptance of who I am and insane amount of pride in who I was becoming. I don't know why, maybe because I'm only child and there was no comparison in the house. So if I would speak on the mic or if I would do something, she would just be like, wow, my daughter, amazing. But I think you need those cheerleaders in life to, be who you are. Do you guys have cheerleaders in your life who helped you be who you are?
You go first, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think my family, my partner, biggest cheerleaders. I have a few friends. I mean, you guys being in that category as well, who I know no matter what, I might be doing the shittiest thing, and not in a way that they will praise me when I'm doing something bad or when I'm not in that way. But I know that they have my back no matter what. And I think what I was taking away from what you said also, right? This idea of confidence and how that is tied to identity and independence also to a large degree. And what does that mean? And where does that come from? Right? How do you what are things that make you confident? And that kind of shows in people. Right? Like, for example, I think when I was an introvert in school, I was not a very confident person. But I think that has changed so much since then that confidence is also kind of a part of my identity. Like you said that you can go in Prague, like be at Prague and be dressed like this. I think that's kind of some of the things that I feel like now. I can be like this and I can be in a place where it's not inappropriate. But, I think stuff like that also really affects the way that you look at yourself and where that confidence comes from. And that shows. I feel like people are also able to perceive parts of your identity without you truly trying to show that. What do you mean by that? It's like I've had people who've worked with me remotely also, like, people that have probably not spent as much time with me in an office setting and have said that you're really structured, you're really planned, like, and I'm just like, I was trying to almost, like, there have been times where I've tried to think as to, okay, like, what have I done, or what have I done to really show that to them? But even without me trying to do that, right? Because it's so much a part of my identity, that's something that people do take away in instances where you don't expect that as well. So, I mean, I feel like this whole perception angle to identity and how people perceive you is also very interesting. Like this cartoon of an elephant and people holding like different parts of the elephant is what kind of comes in my head.
When you were talking about confidence, I actually wanted to say that a lot of my initial so when I was young, really confident, I was living in my head mostly, and when you're in your head, you're the hero for everything, right? So much of bindasti and all of that. But as you get older, there are all these backstories that sort of start playing in your head, and I am at nature somewhere, I think slightly insecure about who I am, or at least who I was, right? But I've always been a performer because I'm a dancer. I'm a I'm a dancer taught to hide your feelings. And while that was great because people would say, "Oh, you look on." They never thought I was underprepared for an exam because I looked like I was very over prepared and confident. And I'm like, "Hello, excuse me, I am freaking out inside." No, you look very calm. I realized that I was almost faking it in some way, or that it was almost like a fake confidence that was always visible to others, which I didn't necessarily always feel. So that's like the flip side to this, sense of wanting to stay in control of who you are, right? But yeah, family is big. I think my family, um, so I have this group of friends, and we have this joke that if you come from a Tambram family, there's no way you can survive with confidence because if you win the Nobel Prize in literature, they'll be like, literature mein chemistry mein nahi. And then if you win it in chemistry, it'll be like chemistry mein physics mein nahi. So you can never do it. Right? It's like it's terrible. So, but I think my mom is like a very unqualified, unqualified kind of love and affection and cheerleading. Um, and she's always had my back, and I've had like great friends who've always believed in me, and you know, um, in relationships like that, it's helpful. But I think my biggest sense of identity comes from my work, which is like such a twisted way to be. And I'm just trying to unravel that now. I've always had my sense of identity from what I do, whether I'm good at what I do, and therefore I deserve to be loved, appreciated, respected. It's terrible. So, it's good in that it forces me to excel at stuff, but it's terrible if your identity is wrapped up because at the first sign of not doing well, you start questioning your existence. You're like,
And your value.
and my value, right? Exactly. And so I think one of the journeys in the past 5 years has been trying to unentangle my self worth and identity from work and what I do at work. It's just so it's work in progress, but
I think that's a very important point you brought out for working women because when I also mentioned, I spoke about advertising, right? And I spoke about my workplace and everything. And if you take away work from me, then who am I? And am I still worthy of anything? And what is my identity? And am I still independent and all of that, right? I think this is a very, very important conversation for working women to really not to keep it a part of your identity and not the only thing that informs your identity, because we are so many things, and I think this is true for women, men, everybody. And that's why when people ask me, so what do you do? And I really wish that question is not answered with a job title. It's answered with like, oh, I swim, I play, I
I
crack
wish
a
they
lot
would
of
ask a different
jokes,
question.
I do this, I do that, I love to walk, I love this, rather than
I wish they would ask you, who are you?
yeah.
Who are you? Rather than,
But people, that's taken as an insult. Now, hey, who are you?
who are you? What do you do?
Yeah. So everybody, it's a conversation starter. Hi, what do you do? And then therefore it becomes part of your identity.
Yeah, and it's also like a 20-year habit, right? It's you start working in your early 20s and then you're going on and on and on. And after 20 years, what are you without that label? Director, vice president, non vice president, manager. People will actually fight for those titles as part of their identity rather. And to me, I feel like that has actually stopped me in the past 5 to 8 years from discovering more parts of myself. As in that that sort of one track focus on finding that identity leaves you very little time to do other things, because you have other identities that you're accommodating, parent, partner, spouse, whatever it is, right? So this part of your identity slowly starts to shrink, and your ability to keep discovering that person, the time you can allot starts to shrink, because how are you going to do it? You work for 8, 10 hours trying to prove a point there, and then you're trying to accommodate all these other things. And you want to keep it sacrosanct, but it's a hard slog. And I let it go. I'm not saying that it happens to everyone. I'm saying that I think I let it go. And I know that a lot of my friends, women and men, actually, women and men, you know, the talk about this midlife crisis, it's not actually a crisis. It's almost like a midlife or reawakening. And it's this sort of frantic grasp to say, I went rappelling in my 20s. I have to be able to do it before my knees give way. It's that sort of reawakening. And I think that that's what I'm trying to do in a more sort of mindful. I know that I'm not the person I was when I was 20. I can't just do a 3-hour dance performance. My knees will give way, right? But how do I re engage with who I am now and find those parts of lost identity that I want to recapture? Like, I want to recapture the more free spirited person that I was. I want to recapture that sense of exuberance and all of that. And yeah, I think it's a very, very slippery slope to identity at work. Um, and I think it's very few people who are able to do it mindfully or recognize it early on and stop it. You know?
Which is why you hear a lot of people, they go crazy after retirement and they're like, what do I do now that I'm retired?
Ab kya, right?
Because they have not fostered the other sides of who they are. Yeah.
I think for me, work has been very interesting because I studied like industrial design, which nobody understood and probably still doesn't understand like what that really means. And then worked as a researcher, and now the work I do is very different. People don't understand it. So I feel like the last decade of me working, most people don't understand the work I do, right? So depending on who's on the other side, I feel like I kind of tailor my response to what I do. Like it can be as generic as I work in education to like as specific as I'm a learning experience designer or whatever that might be, right? So while I think work has been very central to how I derive my sense of self and like my identity, I feel like how that gets expressed is something that has kind of changed a lot because it feels like most people are like, oh, this is a job, like people can do this. That's most of the question that I get, right? And I think um there's a certain, like, I take that as a compliment most of the time, right? I'm like, yeah.
It's easier to deal with it like that. Yeah.
But also I think like 2 years back I kind of had this meltdown of sorts where I was, for the first time, I was not very happy with the kind of work that I was doing, or I was not feeling excited about going to work, right, and getting to do what I wanted to do. And I was like, something needs to change. Like, as somebody who loves like doing the work that I was doing till like as recently as last month, and the work hasn't changed. Like, so something else has shifted. And I think one reframing that I did in my head that has kind of stuck is my work is not my life. My work is one part of my life. And there are other things that kind of define my identity, work being one of them. I can't separate that out. I can't say that I'm a different person at work, and and there are some people who are able to compartmentalize their identities like that. I'm not that person. I am who I am at work as well. But I think just being able to recognize that there are different parts, like you said, whether that's like different roles that we play, and that kind of frames one part of like identity, whether that's of a daughter or a sister or a partner, along with things that we carry at work or things that we do otherwise. Like I think in my head, it's taken me like maybe 5 years of working out to be like, okay, I'm an athlete, right? And that shift in identity, I feel like for my writing, even though I've been writing for 3 years, I don't think of myself as a writer, even though a lot of people associate that tag with me now. But it's interesting to look at those different parts and how much time are you really spending, and is that what you want?
I think we should just put this down as a mantra, right? What you just said, that work is a part of my life. And really just, I think if we are able to articulate that for generations, it really will resolve a lot of issues that come down the line, that it actually becomes toxic after a while. If you keep switching and depending on where you work, if you keep switching your identity to suit that workplace and the people you work with, you tend to lose yourself. So I
Yeah.
think that being grounded and reminding yourself that only a part of what I do and who I am, I think
I'm just thinking of one analogy, right? Like, and this is coming from design school. We used to have this course on color interaction and how colors kind of behave differently, right? I feel like identity is kind of like that. You might have one color that's kind of changing, but in different scenarios, it behaves differently, or different parts of it get highlighted a lot more. And maybe that's an interesting.
Somewhere it looks dull and somewhere
Yeah.
it looks beautiful and
Yeah.
somewhere it looks. That's why I said the environment really matters, where you mix and match and patch yourself into. Yeah. I think that was a lovely way to end this conversation. Yeah. I like how we move to work also. I think that we'll get a lot more into it when we discuss success.
Yeah. So and the parts of us that make us whole, identity and independence. I think the only thing that we may do in the next few podcasts is to maybe do a deeper dive into the economic independence piece. And I think for a lot of us, that's also, terrifically important.
At its core. One of
Yes.
the cores, one of the building blocks of independence.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.